Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Grigoriou Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Vegas 95, we are back at the Apex for an interesting card, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the best card. We only have 10 fights, a lot of short notice cancellations, a really weird DraftKings slate, and a really low level of competition, but we have fights on the list. We can't complain about that. Any card is better than no card, so we're grateful to be here, and hopefully we're able to go out there and find some money-making opportunities. This is the latest in the week I've ever filmed a video like this. Typically I get it out Tuesday, Wednesday. It's Thursday. I don't even know when this video is going to be out, but what I do know is I'm going to try to fly through and give you guys all my insight on these fights this weekend, and hopefully go out there and give proper indication of what I think is going to go down this weekend. As always, going to talk over every single fight from a DraftKings and a betting perspective. Make sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out Cool Bet, check out Establish a Run. Let's not waste any more time. Let's do this. Get the fight night started with the 5-1-1 Stephanie Luciano versus the 5-0-1 Talita Alencar. This is actually a rematch, a fight that happened on Dana White Contender Series where they did go out there and fight to a draw. In that matchup, Talita Alencar was a larger favorite in that spot. She won the first two rounds with her grappling and then tired out, got 10-8 in that last round. She got beat to a pulp by someone Luciano, who is the bigger fighter and who did have better cardio in that spot. But what we did see from Talita Alencar is her prowess and her ability to go out there and shoot takedowns. She shot 24 takedowns last time, an insane number, and something that we'll talk about on DraftKings later, but something that does make her a really interesting fighter. She has since had her UFC debut. She did go out there and win that fight against Rayan dos Santos, whereas we haven't really seen Luciano since. Luciano is that straight striker in this matchup. She doesn't have that same ground opportunity that Alencar has, but she's a very physical fighter. I think she's the cleaner striker on the feet, and she has proven she's the better cardio in this matchup. Alencar, I think, is the better submission grappler. She does have a black belt. She does have a solid ground game. If it gets down there, just lacks the physicality, lacks the cardio, and lacks a few aspects that would make her, you know what, the favorite she was at the start when these two first fought. However, I still think this is a bit of an overcorrection. I did my tape, I took a look back at it, and there was a reason Alencar was a favorite in the last matchup. She does have a clear ground advantage. She was able to win those first two rounds pretty handily because she does have such a good ground game, and I do think in this spot here, I don't think she deserves to be an underdog. Of course, if this fight gets to round 3, Luciano can be live. I think she's the better striker of the two, but early on, I favor Alencar's grappling. I favor her ability to get it down to the mat, and we have seen Luciano stuck down in the bottom position. So until I see Luciano stuff those takedowns at a high clip or win a round that isn't only when Alencar is tired, I think Alencar deserves to be favored here. She isn't someone who I want to be laying chalk on, but as an underdog, I do think she's viable in this spot here. I think she's someone who can win this fight more than the line entails. I like her aggression when it comes to wrestling, and I do think if it hits the mat, she has some submission opportunities as well. However, I do admit Luciano is the better cardio and striker in this matchup, and I do think she's someone who can win as the fight goes on. DraftKings wise, there's only one side here I want, and that is the Alencar side. I picked her to win the spot, and her shooting 24 takedowns in the last matchup shows me an insane DraftKings ceiling. She landed 4 in that matchup. She has the opportunity to go out there and land 5, 6, and when DraftKings gives you 5 points per takedown, that's a pretty good look. She also was able to establish top control in those first couple of rounds. I do think she, as an underdog at 7.7K, she has a lot of upside, a lot of grappling, and her path to victory is predicated on that grappling success. You added some finish upside. I do think she is someone who does have a better chance to win the line and tails. I do like her at 7.7K. Luciano, 8.5. She could very well be stuck on her back the first 2 rounds. She didn't really mount any offense until the third in that spot, so for that reason at 8.5 on a 10-fight slate, I'm not getting to that often. Give me Alencar or nothing in this matchup. It's a dog or pass spot, and we are starting with the dog this week. Next up, we have the 14-5-1 Jarno Errens versus the 14-5-1 Youssef Zalal. Same records, pretty wide line in this matchup here. Youssef Zalal is coming in as a pretty big favorite after doing really well against Billy Quarantillo in that last matchup. I was against him in Billy Quarantillo, and Zalal showed improved striking, improved grappling, and a really good ability to go out there and beat the pressure fighter there in Billy Q. He has historically been a slower pace fighter in the UFC, not really getting many finishes, but he got a submission in his last bout. He is tearing up the Regency when he goes down there, and pretty much what we're getting from Zalal is a pretty consistent product who has lost to a high level of competition and struggled to finish fighters. And I guess that boring style he has kind of brought in a couple spots here. I bet people not like him that much, but he has shown that he's working on his game. He's still young. He does have the ability to mix it up on the feet, on the mat. He's a solid prospect, and after that performance last time, he does come in as a pretty big favorite because of it. Jarno Errens hasn't really found his footing so far in the UFC. He did win his last one, so at least he does have a win here in the UFC, but he has struggled. I mean, he's been taken down in a few matchups. He's been held from bottom position, and although he is a decent technical striker with solid power, doesn't have the most volume, doesn't have the best minute wing equity, and that hole in his ground game has cost him fights before. And I think in this matchup, all the striking is going to be close. I think Errens can definitely compete with Zalal in the striking. On the mat, Zalal has shown great ability to have good timing on his takedowns, good top control, and has shown the ability to work to the back position. Does he always finish fights? Maybe not, but he has shown that in this matchup here, he will have a ground advantage, and I do think he's able to take top position and keep it for as long as he wants, potentially even threatening finishes here. I think think Errens is a bit of a step down from compared to the competition that Zalal's been fighting. I mean, in the UFC, he's fought Billy Q, Woodson, Wu Choi, Tybura. Those are guys who I think all beat someone like Errens in the spot, and I do think Joseph Zalal deserves to be the favorite he is this week. I think he's a clear grappling path to victory. He could even win with volume on the feet, but I do think the easiest course of action is that ground game, and I think he does so. DraftKings-wise, most expensive fighter on the slate, not that hard to get to this week for a reason we will talk about shortly, but he doesn't have the opportunity to go out there and score well. I mean, he has never eclipsed 100 points, but he has never really had these same wrestling path to victory as in this matchup. He scored 99 last time against Quarantillo, and this time here, he has the ability to go out there, land takedowns on a high clip, land a lot of control time points, and has also threatened finishes here. He's landed a takedown in his last 4 matchups. I do think in this spot here, he has that same upside to go out there and have success. At 9.4K, maybe he wouldn't be the best option on a typical slate, but on a slate like this, when you have only 10 fights and you have a minus 600 favorite at 7K, he is someone you can definitely go up there and get. I think he is a safer cash play. I do think people like Williams, Grigoriou, Mariscal may have more GPP upside, but at 9.4K, he has grappling path to victory. I think he wins this fight at a high clip, and he does have a pretty solid floor. I do not mind getting to him this week on DraftKings. Errens, though, not getting him too much. I don't think he wins this spot at a high clip. Zalal has been pretty durable. The path to victory for Errens is a slow pace striking decision. I'm not getting to him. I prefer other underdogs this week, but if you're looking to get different, that is definitely a way to do so. Next up, 10-1, Carl Williams, 7-0, Jonata Diniz, and this is a clear striker versus grappler matchup. It's pretty clear here. You have the better wrestler who averages 4.75 takedowns for 50 minutes here in Carl Williams, who has shown the ability to go out there, take people down at will and look to control them, versus a guy in Jonata Diniz who wants to keep it on the feet and knock your lights out. You look at a guy like Carl Williams, all his fights have gone to decision. He's landed takedowns in all of them. He's had success doing so and winning the scorecards because of that, versus this round 1 power threat here in Jonata Diniz, who has a ton of power in his hands and the ability to shut off people's lights. It's a striker versus grappler matchup. Now, although all fights start on the feet, and there is definitely a case to be made for Diniz being the way crisper striker, having a lot of power, and potentially putting up the light of Carl Williams, I tend to fall towards my grapplers in these binary matchups. I think that Carl Williams has had the opportunity to take him down and keep him there. I haven't liked what I've seen from the get-up game from Diniz. I think he can be put in some precarious situations, and Carl Williams has one plan in mind, and that is take him to the ground here. I think he's able to do so, and on top position, I do think he's able to keep him there. I'm picking the grappler in this matchup. Now, like I said, Diniz has that one-shot knockout power. Every round starts on the feet. There is a potential for him to go out there and land that knockout blow, but I do think more times than not Williams gets him down, and I mean, after that first takedown, I do think he's got the ability to drain the energy from Diniz and make it easier to get takedowns as the fight goes on. With someone like Williams, who is so eager to get to the ground, I do think he has a good opportunity to do so. He's my pick to win. On DraftKings, both these guys are extremely viable. 9K, Carl Williams has landed 8 takedowns in win before, scoring 130, and then 7 takedowns in his most recent win, scoring 117. So he has a very high ceiling at 9K. He has a guy in front of him who he can dominate on the mat and is a very good option there on DraftKings. Flip side of things, though, Diniz is someone who has 7.2K. He won his first fight by knockout, scored 91 points. If he wins this fight, it's probably clipping a guy like Carl Williams who's scoring well. I don't see him winning the decision here. So it's the early knockout upside of Diniz at 7.2K, scoring very well, or the high wrestling upside of someone who have already scored 130 points in the cage in Carl Williams. I like both sides. I lean towards the wrestler here in Carl Williams, who has shown to do this before, and he's my pick to win, but both sides are viable on DraftKings. Next up, 17-6 Carl Rosa versus the 16-8 Pannie Kianzad. Maybe not my favorite fight in the world, but one that I do think has some promise to it. Carl Rosa has been someone who's been a bit higher on than maybe I should be. I think she does have a pretty rounded skill set. She can wrestle. She throws a ton of volume on the feet, averaging over 6 strikes landed per minute, and she's been pretty durable. All her fights have gone to decision, and when she's able to go out there and be the more active fighter, she typically wins them, but when these fighters are bigger than her, pushing her up against the cage, she tends to struggle a little bit. Her opponent here, Pannie Kianzad, is someone who we just saw submitted in her last loss, someone whose ground game is maybe in question, but on the feet, great length, great technicality, and someone who can pose a threat here to Carl Rosa when it comes to the striking. However, at the end of the day, I do think Carl Rosa is the deserving favorite. I think when it comes down to paths to victory, not only can Carl Rosa match the striking of Kianzad and potentially throw more volume, winning the optics that way, but she can win the clinch control. I think she can win takedowns as well, and is the fighter who's going to be more active in that second and third round. I think Carl Rosa is a rightful favorite in this spot here, and I do think her volume brings her to victory this weekend. I do think it's a close fight. I do think you can make a case for Kianzad and her activity and her technical striking and her accuracy, but more times than not, Carl Rosa is able to dictate where this fight takes place, utilize that volume, and win on the optics of the scorecards. Maybe as the fight goes on, potentially look for a submission or some ground and pound. I know Rosa hasn't got a finished win inside the UFC, but Kianzad was caught and tapped pretty quickly to Macy Chiasson. I do think Rosa can be pretty aggressive, fights have a good camp. I wouldn't put that out of the equation. DraftKings wise, 8.6K, I don't mind Carol Rosa, right? You look at ceiling, she's put up 105, 108, 109, 111 before on DraftKings. She has such good volume and even potential wrestling upside in this matchup that she can score very well. She landed 204 strikes last time in 3 rounds to Aldana, scored 81 points in a loss. Carol Rosa does have a ton of volume upside, and I do think in this spot here, not only does she have that volume upside, but potential grappling, maybe even a late finish, and I do think she wins this fight more times than not, so 8.6K is a very solid option. She doesn't have that same flashiness as, a Grigoriou or Williams, but I like her. I think she has one of the safest floors, so if you're playing cash this week, I love Carl Rosen in cash, but I also do think she's a very viable tournament play as well, high ceiling. Flip side of things, another cash option here can be someone like Kianzad. I don't think she wins this fight, but she has put up 31, 42, 24 points in losses before. She does have good activity. This fight is projected to go the distance. I don't think Kianzad wins, but she does have a solid floor compared to the other underdogs in the slate. However, at the end of the day, give me Carol Rosa. Should be a decent fight, honestly. Next up, 8-4, Charalampos Grigoriou versus the 10-4 Toshiyama Kazama. Interesting fight here. 2 guys who I do not think are the best UFC talent. I'll be completely honest about it. Grigoriou saw it have a solid camp, but lost Channing Helliger last time. Shout out Canada. I love Canada, but maybe not the best look that way to lose to the way that he did to Channing Helliger. Whereas Toshiyama Kazama, not a good look so far in the UFC. Finished both those losses. Very aggressive, very solid submission grappler early on, but no head movement on the feet, very slow to striking on the feet as well. Very slow defensively, and I think he's a guy who does have his flaws. At the end of the day, I do think Grigoriou projects better in the UFC. Although his cardio is definitely suspect, he fights out of a better camp. I do think he has the way better technical striking in this matchup, and also the ability to go out there and wrestle decently. Kazama, I do think he's a better submission grappler, but without the takedown prowess to get it down there, and without the ability to really defend strikes on the feet, he seems like a guy who will struggle in a lot of these spots. And against someone as technical and rangy as Grigoriou, I do think he struggles here. If the fight gets extended, maybe there are some qualms and some problems about someone like Grigoriou, but until he does struggle, I think he can land on someone like Kazama at will, who does not move his head off the center line, who is there to be hit. And I do think Grigoriou has the opportunity to not only finish him in this spot here, but look pretty dominant doing so. DraftKings-wise, though, I think they are both viable. 8.8K Grigoriou did not score well in his last matchup, but has somebody in front of him who has been finished, who has not looked good so far. And I do think more times than not, Grigoriou has this finish upside early on. I mean, Kazama's been knocked out in the first round in both his losses. I do think Grigoriou can go out there, land the big shot on the center line, and I do think he can go out there and have a very high ceiling on the slate. Kazama, on the flip side of things, I don't think he wins this fight unless it's wrestling-based. He doesn't have the best striking, again, not the best striking defense, but he is a very aggressive submission grappler. I think if Kazama wins this fight, it comes with an eagerness to grapple, getting a lot of takedowns, pushing the pace. I don't think it happens too often, but when he does a solid GPP play on a 10-fight slate, I do think it's a very solid ceiling and a win. I just don't know how much he wins. On to the main card, 14-8 Yana Santos, 6-2 Chelsea Chandler, and least favorite fight on the card. I'll be completely honest, not the highest on either one of these two fighters, but a fight nonetheless, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. It is expected to go the distance, and a spot where we do have the more technical, cerebral fighter here in Yana Santos versus the more aggressive, shot out of a cannon Chelsea Chandler. And I think when it comes down to it, skipping immediately to my DraftKings analysis, I don't think I'm the biggest fan of Yana Santos this week. She had scored pretty well in some previous appearances, but is typically the one to maybe want to cage push, maybe want to go out there and not utilize that same volume. And I think in this spot here, Chelsea Chandler's going to be a more physical fighter, and the path to victory is pretty clear for Yana Santos. That's just jab her up, use her volume, use her technicality, and be the better striker of the two. And I do think she can do that. I do think she'll win this fight, but on a fight card with people with the volume of Rosa or the grappling equity of Williams and Zalal or the finish upside of Grigoriou, I'm not getting to Yana Santos as much as I want to, but maybe she could be a good contrarian play on this 10-fight slate. I do think more times than not, it's going to be Chelsea Chandler rushing in for some crazy takedowns. She can get on top position, can land some good ground and pound, but on the feet, she is very hittable. I do think Yana Santos is the better technical fighter of the two. I do think she's looking like the more powerful striker of the two. I do think she wins the optics on the feet. Chelsea Chandler, I do think her path to victory is rooted in grappling success. I don't think she gets it too often, but when she does, she could score very well at 7.8K. I'm just not the biggest fan of her skill set in general. She did score 110 against Oliarenko from top position there, but I do think Santos is pretty physical. I do think Santos can control where this fight takes place, and for that reason, Yana Santos is my pick to win. Very ugly fight. I think at the end of the day, Santos is a solid contrarian play and pivot play in that mid-range, but when it comes down to single entry or looking where I'm playing this slate as a whole in a 10-fight slate, this is a fight I'm not getting towards as much as I want to. Both these fighters are a good pivot play if they do fight to their strengths. Next up, short notice replacement 8-0 Quang Lee versus the 25-2 Chris Gutierrez. And this is a spot where we had Chris Gutierrez had an original opponent, was an underdog, and now is sitting at almost minus 600 on some books and a very substantial underdog on DraftKings. And when it comes down to it, I don't mind Quang Le, undefeated fighter, very fun fights. You watch the tape, you have a good time doing so, ton of power, very eager to go forward, but a weird stylistic matchup because Chris Gutierrez doesn't want to brawl like many of Quang Le's past opponents. He doesn't want to go out there and get in a scrap. Chris Gutierrez wants to be the better technical fighter and chop your legs down. Chop the tree, spam leg kicks, one of the best leg kickers we've seen in this division, and they're powerful. And the stance that Quang Le has, the eagerness to go forward, not really checking any of those kicks. I do think Chris Gutierrez chops him down, wins the optics, controls the distance, and wins this fight at a high clip. I kind of agree with this line. Huge disparity in level of competition. I do think Chris Gutierrez is a more proven fighter, and I do think he has the better accuracy, technicality, and leg kicks in this matchup to win the striking affair. If Quang Le can bring him into a brawl, maybe he can have success, but we have seen Chris Gutierrez be pretty safe on the outside, and I do think he continues to do so in this matchup. DraftKings-wise, though, Gutierrez is still at 7K. I mentioned that he was an underdog before, and they kept his salary here. So he has a 7K salary, minus 600 on the money line. He's like a smash play. He is going to be extremely high owned. You're going to have him in cash. There's no question asked. And the question then comes down to is, do you bite the bullet, the chalk bullet in GPP, or do you look to go elsewhere? And I think what I've come down to is, as someone who is picking Gutierrez to win, who, by the way, Gutierrez is not the best historical scorer, so there is some reason to fade him. But if I'm picking him to win, and I do think he has leg kick opportunities and finish upside, and I might be even playing this finish line as a whole, I think he's live at 7K. I mean, he historically hasn't been the best scorer, but he scored a 114 in a leg kick win against Morales, 104 against Edgar, and it doesn't really matter at 7K on a card where I'm not really picking many fighters, underdogs to win. I think at 7K is someone you have to go to. If you have a large portfolio and you're looking to get different and you're looking to take this down on your own, go different. Maybe hope Quang Le brings him to a brawl, get leverage over the field and play Le at 6.7K, or not play this fight at all. But I think in single entry or definitely in cash, you're going to have to play Gutierrez. Very high implication to win. I do think he has finish upside, high ceiling as well. And I do think at 7K, he allows for so many different options up top. I'm personally playing the chalk this week. If I was max entering this card, I would look to get different. I'd maybe play some Jackson, which we talked about, some Diniz, but at this same time, 7K, it's hard to get away from him. I think he wins this fight at high clip. I think he has finish upside. I think Chris Gutierrez wins, and he is someone I'm going to be having almost all my lineups, and I'm kind of be a chalk donkey because of it. Next up, 8-0, Danny, left hand to God Barlow versus the 12-4 debutant Nikolai Veretennikov. Fun fight. I don't think Veretenikov's that bad. Lost to Michael Morales on the Dana White Contender Series and aged a fight that's not aging too poorly, actually, but Danny Barlow has shown some incredible promise. He is a very good athlete, still new to MMA, but phenomenal hand speed, phenomenal accuracy, phenomenal boxing as a whole, and that left hand is truly a weapon here. I have not always been the highest on Barlow. I think that there are flaws when he faces a good grappler. He can definitely go out there and succumb to that pressure. I think he has been winning a lot of these fights against lower level of competition due to his athleticism, and I think his athleticism is going to carry him to a lot of places here. But in a spot like this against a debutant like Veretennikov and a fight that is mostly been played out on the feet, I have to favor Barlow in this spot. Barlow striking is no joke. Incredible hand speed, incredible power in that left hand, and he is just a guy who has good finishing instincts and some good optics in the feet as well. And more times than not, I think he wins the striking exchanges. I think he utilizes his athleticism to his advantage. I think he wins this fight. I do not think Veretennikov is that bad. He is a solid striker. He was able to go 15 minutes with Michael Morales. I do think there's a clear difference in hand speed, and I think the way I see this fight playing out is, although Veretennikov keeps it close, I think more times than not, Barlow wins the optics or wins the moments with his power, with his hand speed, and I do think it's a spot where Barlow does get this done more times than not. DraftKings-wise, I'm interested in this one. I do think Barlow has a ton of upside at 9.3K. I think he's a solid play, but he's boom or bust. You need that knockout, and Veretennikov has been pretty tough. So without that knockout, Barlow's not going to wrestle that often. He hasn't always been the biggest volume guy, so I think he needs that knockout to be in the optimal lineup. And when you have Zalal around him, Mariscal, Williams, Grigoriou, although I like Barlow to win, and I think he wins more often than the guys below him, I don't think I'll be playing too much of him. I think Zalal has more grappling upside. I think Mariscal has more finish upside. I think Williams has more grappling upside. At 9.3K, I'll be playing Barlow due to his incredible hand speed and his opportunities to get that knockout. But without that knockout, I don't think he makes the optimal lineup. So not getting to him 100% of the time. I think there are reasons to fade him. There are reasons to go elsewhere. And I like Danny Barlow. I do think he wins. He'll be going elsewhere. Veretennikov, I think he could survive on toughness. I think if you're looking to get different from Gutierrez, you could play him. If Veretennikov utilizes that wrestling, maybe he can have some success. But more times than not, he loses. More times than not, I'd rather other people around him, so I'm not getting him too often. Give me left-handed God, give me Danny Barlow, but maybe not my favorite fight on DraftKings. Co-main event, 16-6, Chepe Mariscal, 23-6-1, Damon Jackson. Very fun fight here. I historically haven't been the highest on Chepe Mariscal either. I think he's gotten away with a few wins, and I do think Damon Jackson is going to be the best fighter he's fought so far. I thought he lost that fight to Morgan Shalyaya. Jack Jenkins broke his arm, and Trevor Peek is Trevor Peek, but you're going to get a guy in front of here in Damon Jackson who will go forward, who will shoot a ton of takedowns, who will really test that ground game, and although Chepe Mariscal has looked great on the feet, he was taking down control in the regional scene. Damon Jackson does have really good back takes. He does have a very good aggressive ground game. And I do think Damon Jackson in earlier goings can really pose problems in the wrestling. The issue is Damon Jackson can tire as the fight goes on. On the feet, Chepe Mariscal will be a lot more aggressive, have a lot better striking, better technicality. And I do think it's made for a very fun fight. I do think Damon Jackson has success early. I do think Chepe Mariscal has that success late. Who prevails? And if Mariscal had more one-shot power, maybe I'd pick him here, because I do think he's going to have a ton of success as the fight goes on. But I don't see him as big as one-shot power guy. And Damon Jackson has been able to withstand some of these guys, hold them down, have some success, the same way he did to Alex Hernandez in that last spot. So I think the line's wide, and because of that, I think I'm actually going to pick Damon Jackson in the spot here. Chepe Mariscal has definitely got some opportunities round 3. Maybe I'll play some Mariscal late, but until I see that, I think Damon Jackson's going to spam the takedowns. I think he's got really good back takes, and I think he can control him to the point where he's able to win a decision. Could be very dicey. Damon Jackson is definitely not the most trustworthy fighter on the feet, but I have yet to see Mariscal completely tested, and because of the very nice price tag of Damon Jackson, maybe I'll pick him this week here. DraftKings-wise, I think both have equity. I think either Mariscal goes out there and gets controlled early and then is able to land a ton of shots, utilizes the volume he has, the power he has, and threatens a finish in the second or third round. Or if Jackson wins, I think Jackson's on the optimal lineup. In a win, Jackson's getting takedowns, getting control time, threatening finishes from back positions. He's not winning this fight without a ton of control. 101 against Sabatini, 106 against Kirk, 112 against Rosa. He has scored very well on DraftKings, and I do think Damon Jackson in a win makes the optimal lineup. With Gutierrez right there, he's a great combination. He's a great pivot off of Gutierrez as well. I do love Damon Jackson. I'm not getting away from Mariscal. I think Mariscal has a lot of finish upside late, like I mentioned, but maybe not too often. I think I'm on Jackson this week, but a very fun fight. I do think it finishes by Mariscal more times than not, but I do think Damon Jackson has decision-winning equity with that grappling upside. Should be a fun fight. And on to the main event, the rematch we didn't need, but we have anyways. The 25-8 Marcin Tybura, 16-4 Sergey Spivac. Last time they fought, Tybura won a 3-round decision. And I'm interested in this line. I think when it comes down to projecting the two fighters and where they're going to be in a year and where they project to end up in terms of pure skill, Sergey Spivac maybe is the better fighter. And I do think in a year from now, he will be a higher ranked fighter than the two. But when these two guys go up against each other, I think it's a tough matchup for Spivac. I think Spivac is the much better athlete early. I think he's got a lot more explosiveness. I think he can threaten to win this fight early more than Marcin Tybura. But when it comes down to seeing this fight goes on, if Spivac does not get that early finish, I think Tybura has the better cardio. I think Tybura battles through adversity better. I think he's got the ability to land takedowns of his own right and has the experience to go out there and win the minutes in the later rounds. I think a 5-round fight favors Marcin Tybura. Now, if there's any fighter to look minus 500, it's Sergey Spivac early, and I do credit his finishing opportunities early, but Marcin Tybura has already wrestled him before. Marcin Tybura has better volume and experience in the later rounds that I do think he could utilize to his advantage here, and if this fight gets out of the second round, I do favor Marcin Tybura, so I'm actually picking the underdog in this matchup. I do think it's a very interesting matchup. Like I said, Sergey Spivac has round one finish upside, but if it gets out of that first round, maybe I'll live bet Tybura. I think he's someone who can win the minutes, has a better level of experience, and can wrestle Spivac the same way he did in their first fight. Give me Tybura. DraftKings-wise, though, both of you guys are live. Spivac number one because when he wins, typically early. 134 against Lewis, 135 against Sakai, 113 against Hardy, 131 against Vandera. When he wins, it's scoring phenomenally, and I do think if he's beaten Tybura, it's very often early on. He is the better athlete, and I do think he can threaten positions if he gets on top. Sergey Spivac, a great GPP target. But Tybura, as the fight goes on, like I mentioned, better volume, better chance to win. He just scored 120 against Tuvasa, has 5 rounds to work in this matchup, and at an underdog price tag, I do not mind him in this spot here. I think he goes out there, and like I mentioned 5 times already, the later this fight goes, the more it favors him. I will have some Tybura 7.9K. He's my pick to win, but due to that aggression and that finish upside of Spivac, I'll be playing both on DraftKings. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. And a quick Q&A through my quick picks. We're taking Marcin Tybura, Damon Jackson, Danny Barlow, Chris Gutierrez, Yana Santos, Cheryl Lampos, Grigoriou, Carol Rosa, Carl Williams, Youssef Zalal, and Talita Alencar. DraftKings-wise, 10 fight slate. You can't get away from Chris Gutierrez, 7K. I'm playing in the chalk this week. I'll be playing a ton of him. Up top, I like Zalal's wrestling upside. I like Williams' wrestling upside. I think Grigoriou has KO upside early on. Rosa has a phenomenal floor with her volume and path to victory. I'm targeting that main event, and I think underdog-wise, like I said, Gutierrez, but also Alencar's aggression with her takedowns. She shot 24 of them last time at 7.7K. I like her. I think Diniz and Lee need to win their fight by knockout if they're going to win. So because of that, they're solid punt plays down low. But also Damon Jackson, wrestling upside as well. I do like him as underdog. 10-fight slate. Find ways to be different. It should be a fun one. No more Rainmakers, so betting-wise, on top of that, I'm playing Gutierrez KO plus 200, and that's all I got so far. So make sure to check me out on Twitter at GamblesGore to see what I'm playing. Check out CoolBet to see anything I'm posting there as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. But that's going to do it for me here. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings betting endeavors this weekend, and let's make some money, guys.